I never would have believed in Bigfoot if I hadn't been kidnapped by one. It all started when I decided to take a solo camping trip in the woods. Probably not the smartest idea in the world, but what can you do? I'd always loved nature and thought it would be a great way to clear my head and get away from the stresses of everyday life. I arrived at my campsite, set up my tent, and started a fire. I was just getting ready to make dinner when I heard a strange noise coming from the woods. At first, I thought it was just an animal, but as the noise grew louder, I realized there was something bigger. But then I realized it's probably just a moose, some deer, maybe a bear. But I've dealt with those in the past, and they weren't too unmanageable. I decided to eat dinner quickly and get in my tent. And as the night drew colder, I started to hear the noises again. I almost thought about packing up and leaving, but I decided to stick it out and I drifted off to sleep. I'm not sure how long I was asleep for when the tent moved and I saw an animal budging against the side of the tent. I started screaming, not knowing what it was, but I couldn't do anything. The zipper broke, and in came a tall, hairy beast. I struggled and kicked, but it was no use. The creature was too strong. It grabbed me by the arm and started to drag me deeper into the woods. I screamed for help, but no one was around to hear me. I was completely alone. I tried to fight back as we kept going deeper and deeper into the woods. I could feel the branches and twigs scratching at my skin, the dirt under my nails as I tried to pull myself away from the creature. But it kept dragging me further and further into the forest. There was nothing I could do. This thing was too big, too tall, too strong. I was terrified, and I thought for sure that I was going to die. After what felt like hours, we finally arrived at a cave. The creature pushed me inside and then disappeared into the darkness. I was alone, trapped in a cave with no way out, and I'm sure this is the end for me. I began to look around to see if there was anything I could use as a weapon, but there was not much, just some sticks, some stones. I looked around myself, and I wasn't too injured, just some scrapes, but I guess I was lucky at this point. But then something strange happened. The creature came back, but this time it had a small fire in its hands. It placed the fire on the ground and then sat across from me. I was confused. I didn't know what was happening. I don't know if it had made this fire or if it had went back to my camp and brought some coals and fire from my own fire pit, but an animal or some creature making its own fire didn't seem likely. It was just very confusing. But then something strange happened. It started to speak. It spoke in a language I didn't understand, but I could tell it was trying to communicate with me. I tried to speak back, but my words were jumbled and scared. We sat there for what felt like hours trying to understand each other. It wasn't threatening me, but I was still terrified. As the night went on, the creature began to calm down. It stopped making growling noises and huffing and puffing, and its eyes softened. I began to see it as less of a monster and more as a misunderstood being. We sat there in silence, looking into each other's eyes. I could see the sadness and loneliness in its eyes, and I knew that it was just as scared and alone as I was. The creature eventually fell asleep, and I was able to make my escape. I quietly stumbled through the woods, out of the cave and through the woods. I didn't know if I was going in the right direction, but I eventually found a road, and the family driving along it helped me find my way back to my car. To this day, I don't know what the creature wanted with me. I'm just glad that I made it out alive.